Good evening. My name is Shayla Solomon, and it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Sigma Theta Omega Chapter's virtual conversation. Tonight, we are honoring caregivers and preparing persons to care. But more than just a conversation, you are in for an experience. We are starting your week off with valuable information. So please take a moment to tell a friend that the live has started. And if you know someone who is a caregiver, please text them real quick or give them a call and let them know that they should be tuned in, locked in right now to receive the great information that's in store for everyone tonight. Now, tonight's forum is part 3 of the Women Lead series. And we are so excited and so pleased to be in collaboration with AARP Virgin Islands. We would like to extend sincere gratitude to AARP for their partnership and support in this endeavor. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social welfare organization with a membership of nearly 38 million that helps people turn their goals into realities and real possibilities. They strengthen communities and fight for the issues that matter most to families. Some of these issues include healthcare and employment, income security, retirement planning, so many things that they have such a great focus on. AARP was founded in 1958 and has offices in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our chapter's vice president and program chair, Ms. Deja Todman, and the programs and connection committees for their diligent efforts. Thank you so much. Now, this evening, I am honored to have with us to lead the conversation our special guests. We have Dr. Migdalia Bratwick and Ms. Pamela Toussaint. I will have the opportunity to introduce them in just a moment, but first, please join me in welcoming for opening remarks, Mrs. Julisse Holder, President of Sigma Theta Omega Chapter.
Welcome, 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 everyone. Good evening to our viewing audience, to our highly esteemed panelists, and to our moderator and host. My name is Julisse Holder, and I am the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Sigma Theta Omega Chapter, on the islands of St. Thomas and St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands. And on behalf of my 60-plus members, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. Today, we want to talk about caregiving. And the impetus for this conversation is that November is recognized as National Family Caregivers Month. So we, Sigma Theta Omega, partnered with AARP to bring to you this virtual forum to discuss the experiences of caregiving before and after the call of care. We recognize the important work that you do on a daily basis, and we honor and celebrate your selfless service to your loved ones. We hope that the information provided to you today really resonates and assists a friend of a friend who may be in need. So without further ado, I will throw it back to Ms. Sheila S. Solomon, but welcome once again.
Thank you so much, President Holder. And again, folks, I hope that you took a moment to text someone or call someone. The live has started. And if you know of anyone who is a caregiver, please encourage them to tune in. Now, in recognition of AKA Caregivers Day, which will be observed on Friday, November 19th, we are providing a platform of support to those who care for loved ones by providing quality, compassionate care on a daily basis. So allow me to introduce our special guests. We have first Dr. Migdalia Brathwaite, and she's a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh and holds a terminal degree in counseling psychology. She is the program developer and director of the Division of Behavioral Health's Clubhouse and the clinical supervisor at the Department of Health, Division of Behavioral Health on the island of St. Croix. She has served as the coordinator of the St. Croix Trauma Learning Community and has over 25 years of experience in shaping the behaviors of diverse populations. She is a creative life strategist, thought leader, spiritual teacher, and forgiveness facilitator. Dr. Brathwaite is the founder of Green Brain Innovations, a personal development organization. She's a speaker and seminar leader, and we are just so thrilled to have her with us tonight. Dr. Brathwaite's aim is to point people towards forming deeper relationships with God, creating compassionate communities, igniting healing, and living lives of wholeness. So, Dr. Brathwaite, welcome, welcome. And now I'd like to introduce our second guest for the evening. And I just have been having such a great time with Pamela with the behind the scenes. You make it so fun. And I thank you so much for that. But Miss Pamela Toussaint is a native of St. Croix, a Crujan in the building tonight, and also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, our sister organization. She possesses more than 15 years of professional experience in nonprofit, semi-autonomous, and governmental organizations with expertise in nonprofit management and human resources. She currently serves as the Associate State Director of Advocacy and Community Outreach for AARP in the Virgin Islands. In her role, she is responsible for spearheading the advocacy and community outreach of AARP in the St. Thomas and St. John district. She focuses her efforts on issues pertaining to caregiving and priorities of AARP in all aspects of federal and local policies that help aging Virgin Islanders live their best lives. As Associate State Director and also a full-time caregiver to both her parents and disabled sibling, she intends to highlight the need for and importance of the development of a one-stop shop for long-term care resources for the elderly and disabled adults. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to thank you in advance for the information, the experiences, the resources that you're going to share tonight. And now I am going to just take a pause and turn things over to you, Dr. Brathwaite, and you can move forward with your dynamic presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Solomon. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to share this PowerPoint. So what would it be if we didn't have some technical difficulties here? I'm not sure if you're able to see the screen.
Okay. Dr. Bradley, okay.
Okay, are you able to see it?
Now.
Thank you so much.
We're coming shortly.
All right, great. All right, so tonight we are going to talk about before and after, the call to care, because the truth is that we are all called to care. And when we are first in this world, when we first come into this world, we are all groomed to move into a caregiving space. But I really like this quote that says the closest thing to being cared for is to care for someone else. And isn't that true? When we're caring for others, on some level, we have to try to tap into the part of ourselves that's able to care for someone else. But Rosalind Carter has a thought that is so germane to the work that we do here in trying to put the spotlight on caregiving. And she says there's only 4 kind of people in the world. They are the ones who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and finally, those who will need caregiving. And so caregiving is at the epicenter of our world, our life. And so it's really important to remember that, and statistics bear that out. 39.8 million caregivers provide care for adults with disabilities and illnesses. And there's 43.5 million caregivers that provide informal and unpaid caregiving to adults and to children at least 12 months of age. You know, caregivers are extraordinary. They really carry themselves like they're superheroes, right? They are behavior managers, counselors, cheerleaders, huggers, inspirational coaches, hygiene enthusiasts, learning advocates, mind shapers, life strategists, creative coaches, family counselors, planners, comforters, encouragers, hope builders, advocates, belief makers, goodwill ambassadors, and caregivers ultimately. But what do we see that happened here? In this extraordinary space of caregiving, sometimes the caregiver gets eclipsed with all of the duties that they have to perform. And what's really important is that caregiving is a big event in life. Again, it's at the epicenter of our lives. And most big events in our lives, they're marked by ceremonies and rituals, aren't they? So, for example, when you get married, it makes you a spouse. When you have a child, sometimes people have a naming ceremony. And when you have a graduation, that acknowledges your educational achievements. And of course, when you have a funeral, that marks the loss of a loved one. But why isn't society talking more about caregiving? Why aren't we talking about that more? If from the time that we're born, we're being shaped and groomed towards moving into our own caregiving, why is it that we aren't having these conversations more often, that we don't see them more often in the newspapers, in the news, in our workspaces, in our churches? We don't see this conversation specifically of caregiving enough. And why is it that that doesn't happen? Well, the truth is that sometimes caregiving can feel very much like this picture, right? Like you're just in a space and a storm has sort of come into your life and you're just holding on for dear life. And some of the things that make the caregiving conversation a difficult one to have is uncertainty. We really aren't always clear on what we're stepping into. And of course, fear. And then the new roles that we'll have to take on. We're not always sure what those new roles will be. And all of those things together create new stories in our lives. Stories that we don't really have full awareness of, stories that scare us, roles that are always evolving. So let's look at the new stories, right? When you become a caregiver, as I said before, there are no ritual ceremonies. No one congratulates you or sends you presents. Not even if you want to be a caregiver, are you invited into the process. Caregiving oftentimes is something that you just step into, and it's an unknown space with a new story. And you kind of put on this new cap of caregiver, but you're not always sure where you're going in the process. And then the new role, it doesn't always come with directions. We ask ourselves, well, where do I begin in this role as a new caregiver? And thinking of yourself in that role can be very scary because it's uncharted territory. And sometimes even having someone call you a caregiver can feel uncomfortable because the balance of power has changed. For example, if it's your husband or if it's your spouse, husband, wife, or if it's your parent, the balance of power feels very different. And it's always sort of this balancing act of where am I in this space? Do I feel comfortable calling myself a caregiver, or am I just a supporter, right? And so there are so many pieces of the new roles that we step into in the caregiving space that require us to develop a comfort level. And sometimes we have to develop that comfort level very quickly. And then, of course, there's that new normal that you have, right? You know your old life as you had it, and then all of a sudden you're now in a new space, and you have to be this coordinator where you have to get the right information about your caregivee's condition. You have to make decisions about their lives that you hadn't really thought maybe that you would have been making at whatever time you step in, because there's no perfect time. There's no perfect time to step into a caregiver role. So sometimes it sort of catches you before you really have made this decision about, how am I going to step into this space and stand there in a level of feeling competent and confident in the space. And of course, then you are the essential partner in the team for that person, that caregiving team. Certainly their doctors and their nurses and their other people that are involved in the care, but you, the new caregiver, are the person that's in the space and, focusing on this person's care management. And of course, you have to sort of open yourself up to finding, where are all the services? How do I move into this space? And sometimes there are things that we can miss. But when we add all those things together, the new story, the new role, and the new normal, we come up with what I call a big idea narrative. Right? And this big idea narrative is sort of like the first narrative that comes into your space, that's birthed in your mind and your heart about who you are in this role. And so we're just going to talk about one big idea narrative tonight. And so the first one is the who. Who am I becoming in this new space of being a caregiver? Am I becoming a blank to my blank? So in the past, some of the narratives I have heard have been, am I becoming a husband to my mother? Am I becoming a parent to my parent? Am I becoming an overseer to the whole trajectory of the way that our home was run? And the who is a place that you could sort of be stuck in for a minute, because it's a new narrative that's birthing inside of you about your who you're going to be in the space. And it's really important to allow yourself to kind of have an interaction with that narrative, come to know what that narrative really means and the truth about that. Because in the who narrative, there is a truth that's really important. And the truth of the who is that sometimes this expanded role of being a caregiver is a role that causes you to really sort of look at, how is this new role impacting me? And there may be some levels of grief about who you were before you took on this role, and grief about this you that you're moving towards, that you don't really have a lot of familiarity with as yet. And so grief is a normative part of this journey. Again, why aren't we talking more about this journey? Why aren't people really sort of looking to share how they came to know their who truths, what they felt in the who space? So, as I said before, people don't talk about that, because deep in the soul and the heart of the who is fear and uncertainty and a private narrative. And that private narrative is, can I do this? Can I do this? All right. So let's talk a little bit about the overwhelm of caregiving very quickly. So one of the things that we struggle with in this narrative, the private narrative of, can I do this, are the shouldas, the wouldas, and the couldas. Now, the shoulda, woulda, couldas comes from this place of wanting to do the role of being a caregiver really perfectly. And sometimes the people around us, whether they be part of the team or whether they be family members, church members, sometimes this shoulda, I should have done this, I would have done it, I could have done it better than that, right? Comes from things from outside of us and things inside of us. But let's talk about the things outside of us. Sometimes you have voices outside of you saying, why don't you just whatever? Or maybe they'll say something like, well, if I were you, I would do whatever that thing is. Or sometimes people make it sound very simple, and they'll say things like, well, you just need to do whatever it is that they feel you just need to do. Or maybe they'll say, well, all you have to do is this. And so sometimes being in that space with your shoulda, woulda, couldas can be very overwhelming. It can be a space where you feel like, where do I begin? And I'm not doing this the right way. And I'm making these mistakes and I'm ashamed. I feel embarrassed that I didn't do this in the way that I shoulda, woulda, coulda. And sometimes that feeling, as we can see, can be very isolating, right? But let's talk about some of the other things, right? The overwhelm of caregiving, it can decrease your rest. It can increase guilt and isolation. It can leave you feeling judged by yourself and by these voices and these personas and these team members outside of you. It could leave you feeling very saturated with negative self-talk, and it could cause you to embrace the falsehood of perfection. Because the truth is that as a caregiver, whether you're a new caregiver, whether you're a caregiver that has been in it for 5 years, 3 years, 20 years, however long it's been, this is something you cannot forget. There is no perfection in caregiving. Holding on to an idea of perfection really causes you to set yourself up for pain and disappointment. And the job itself is so filled and so saturated that these thoughts of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, that perfectionistic kind of thought process, is something that can cause you really to feel hindered as you move into a space that already is not a comfortable space to be in. Even if you're doing the best job and you're showing the best love and care that you can for your caregivee, no one wants to really have to care for someone. We all want that person to be well, to be vibrant. But we know, as I said before, at the epicenter of life is the call to care. So let's talk about self-care, because the truth is that everything that I just said rests on the foundation of self-care. What are you doing to make sure that you can step into the role, imperfect as it may be, in a place of being able to understand that if you don't care for yourself, then you can't do the job in the way that you would like to do it, as imperfect as that will be. So let's talk about some of the things that people typically consider when they think about self-care. Healthy eating, vacations, exercise, shopping, faith practices, hobbies, and rests. Those are some of the things that people typically would think that they need to do with self-care. But tonight, we're just going to touch on a few of these things. We're going to talk about self-giving, creating a green space, an enjoyment plan, grounding, forgiveness, and creating a victory log. These are some of the things that are things that help you to really touch the heart of self-care. Now, sometimes people think that self-care is a good massage, getting your nails done, your hair done, going for a day at the beach, and being able to just kind of decompress. And yes, those are parts of the journey. But these parts of the journey that we're going to talk about tonight are the parts that work for you when your soul and when your deeper self just feels weary and you really need to tap into something that's very foundational for you. So I would like to know how you define self-care. So I want you to take a minute and I want you to think about that. And if and when we get to a place where you can ask a question or something like that, please share with me. How do you define that for you? Because the truth is that self-care is an art form, right? So the way that I do it may not be the way that you do it, may not be the way that your neighbor does it, or your coworker, or all the people that are providing self-care to themselves. Maybe what I just said, getting your nails, hair done, and getting a good massage and going on the beach, that does the trick for you, and you're able to move forward. And if that's the case for you, bravo. But the truth is that there are many different ways for us to feel our sense of value and our sense of worthiness and our sense of empathic living in the world of caregiving. Okay, so I'd like to know also if you would also think, now this is thought work for you. As a therapist, one of the things that I like to do is to give people some good thought work assignments. So write this down. What is your history of self-care? Because the truth is that if you didn't have a practice of self-care before you started this self-care journey, you will not step into it with an anchoring and a grounding. Because just as we saw in that picture of the gentleman holding on to the lamppost and really sort of being blown by the winds of the storm, caregiving can feel very much like that. So I want you to think, just take a minute right now and think, what were some of the things that you have done for yourself in the past that grounded you and anchored you in a place where you understood that you needed to do these things? Why is that important in this self-care space? Because when you're in the self-care space, when you're giving care to that person that means so much to you, it can be very easy to forget that there were ways that you cared for yourself in the past. Sometimes we, yes, us, you and I, the ones who are moving along in this journey, we can really forget the fact that I need things too. That in the midst of this self-care journey, there's me. There's me. And we can forget that if we don't keep ourselves strong in areas that I like to call the replenishments, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, in the areas of the replenishments and in the area of self-giving, that we will not be giving the best care that we are able to do. Not perfect, but the best care that we're able to do. So write this down, ponder it on your own. If you want to share when we talk, or if you have a comment, please do share something that you did for yourself in the past. Let's move on.
Hi,
So, yes.
Dr. Bradford.
Yes.
Hi, it's Pamela.
Yes.
I really wanted to just be able to jump in and share, because you asked
Thank
some
you.
really great questions about self-care and what it looks like. And as I had mentioned in my bio, I am a full-time employee with AARP as a social care director, but I'm also a caregiver.
Yes.
And this journey of mine started about a year ago, and it caught me off guard. I mean,
Yes.
although I'm in a place that I should know better, I should do better, I really honestly did not know what to expect.
Yes.
And I think that's why having this conversation tonight is such an important time, because I know there's other
Very
people
important.
who are either going through what I'm going through,
Mhm.
or about to. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone at some point in their life will be in the position to care. And you mentioned that in the
Yes.
beginning.
Yes.
And when I think about just self-care, the first thing that comes to mind was, one, do I even know what it looks like anymore?
Exactly.
Because I am so caught up with caring for my parents, caring for my disabled sister. And like I said, it caught me off guard. I'm still, feeling sometimes like I'm in a whirlwind, but I'm
Yeah.
here, I'm surviving. And it is because of the support system that I have been able to
Mhm.
surround myself with people who have gone through this and are still going through this. And
Yes.
opportunities like this, speaking to someone like yourself, and the great work, of course, that ARP does in terms of
Yeah.
providing resources to individuals who are either going through the same process or about to go through the same process of caregiving. But um, when the one thing that I've recognized too with this whole caregiving thing, and
Mhm.
it makes me stop and think about when you're on the plane, and I use this as an example all the time, and
Yes.
you hear that information where, just about when you're just about to take off, they say, okay, they give you that emergency briefing.
Mhm.
If anything happens, make sure that you put the mask on yourself, and then you turn to the person, your loved one next door.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you, in caregiving, you don't ever stop to think about self. And
That's right.
that's where you go wrong.
Mhm.
And you have to, because in order for you to take care of your loved one, it starts with you. How can I be good to my parents? How can I be good to my sibling? How can I be good to my spouse or whoever it is that I'm taking care of? If Pamela, and it sounds selfish sometimes because we don't think of things
Yes.
like that. We don't look at caregiving as a job or a
Yes.
task. It is it is almost like a privilege to be
Mm-hmm.
able to show the love to someone or persons, in my case my parents, who's taken care of me for all these years, still do. you know, I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that. But
Yeah.
I also have to stop at times and say, you have to take care of self. So for
Yes.
me, sometimes I don't even know what self-care looks like. And
Exactly.
and that's, I think, a question that we probably need to see if we can get a response. What does it really look like? Because to me, could that be when I do my nails, get my hair done,
Right.
take that walk, down the new waterfront? Is that self-care?
Mhm.
Finally, calling my trainer and saying, I'm actually showing up today for my exercise class. All of
Yes.
these things, are self-care. Because like I said, I didn't recognize what self-care was, but I understand now why it's important to take a moment and take care of myself, because I have to be good in order for me to take care of those individuals. I
Exactly.
think Sheila has
Yes.
some points she wants to
I
share.
I
Hi.
wanted to jump right in because I
Yes.
think you highlighted it perfectly. The bottom line is you cannot pour from an empty cup, and I
Cannot
say
pour
that
from an
all the
empty
time.
cup.
So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
to answer Dr. Bratwick's question and also to answer your question, because even within my family, I have a grandmother who just turned 93. So she's up in age, has some health requirements. There are other family members where from time to time you may have to step in and provide care. But I think first and foremost, I do a little bit of self-reflection. And I
Yes.
think self-reflection is the absolute start of self-care,
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing, am I burned out? Am I
Mm.
tired? Am I frustrated? So I think
Yes.
the self-awareness starts before anything else, at least for me. And
Mhm.
then I decide, all right, is it time for me to schedule an appointment with my therapist so that I
Yes.
can, get all of this out
Mhm.
so that I
Yes.
can be in the best shape, form, mentally,
Sure.
emotionally,
Yes.
Correct.
physically
Yes.
to care for my loved ones. So that would be my comment to the
Mhm.
conversation.
Right.
Thank you
I
for
mean,
that. And I just want both of you to kind of tap into this with me, right? Because sometimes creating your definition for self-care, yes, you can go back and look at your self-care history,
mhm.
but what if you didn't really put a lot of effort into that? Where do you start then,
Mhm.
right? So, I'd like you to think with me right now about the color green. Let's just think of it together. Everyone that's here listening, just think about that with us. All right. And I have a picture of it here, but I just really want you to think of the color green for you. If you have to close your eyes and just think about it for a minute, just do that for this minute. And I just want you to, as you see the sun kind of bathing the earth with sunlight and see yourself in that space feeling warm and cared for by the environment that you're in. I want you to think, when you think of the color green and you're in a space where it's just profoundly wrapping itself around you, what kind of words come to your mind as you think of that? Think of that just for a moment. What kinds of words come to your minds, ladies?
Safe,
Safe,
peace,
peace,
peace.
Peace,
hmm
freedom,
freedom,
mhm.
hmm
Joy,
joy, hmm what else?
growth, growth.
Growth.
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
progression. Right.
Yes.
Correct.
And if we were to sit in this space together and we were to have written down all those words, right? They're just a few because, in the interest of time, we have to move on. But those words can be the beginning of creating a new or a revised definition of self care, right? Freedom, growth, peace. What can those things, where can you start in your life in looking at where can I create just a little bit more freedom? Are there 5 minutes in my day that I can just sit in a space that I can connect with self-care, whether anybody knows it or not. It doesn't have to be the biggest production ever, but it's a space where you're checking in with self. It's like you said, Shayla, about self-awareness, right? Where is it that I can feel this sense of freedom right now? Can I feel it as I take my breath in and acknowledge my breathing, the pace of my breathing? Or maybe I can remember something that I did that made me feel very proud of the way that I moved through that space in either caring for the person that was receiving care from me or caring for myself in that moment. Did I show up for myself, right? That's self-care, right?
Mhm.
Do I have information that now helps me to feel less stress and I could stay in this space of green? So this is just a little opening for people who are struggling with, what does self-care mean to me? Start by going into the green space. Start by thinking about that and listen deeply for what comes up for you, right? Maybe relaxing comes up for you. I love the freedom, right? Because that's what we all want. So start with the green space. But let's move on in the interest of time.
Mhm.
So when you're in the green space, let's say that you get in there and you have like a real grounding in the green space. So now you know what self-care looks like for you in the green space. Now you have some things that you're going to be creating in the green space, some tasks. And one of the big tasks for your green space is to challenge negative thoughts. What are some of the negative thoughts that may come up for you? So here's how we can challenge some of those. First, why is this thought here? What did this thought come to teach me? Do I have to believe this, what this thought is saying to me? Sometimes these thoughts come into our minds, like when we looked at the overwhelm of caregiving, the shoulda, woulda, couldas. Do I really have to believe that? Are there other options that I have not considered as yet? Because sometimes we feel very locked into this is how it has to be. But is there a little freedom there? Can we exercise self-care by finding some freedom space in the green space? And ultimately, am I having a halt moment? Okay, so this is something that's very popular, but it's really worth exploring in the green space. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. All these are the tenets of caregiving. As much as you love your family members, or as much as you feel like, okay, this is what I signed on to do, and I'm going to stay the course, right? Have you considered that you may be having a halt moment? All right, so let's move on. When your care recipient is having a good day, how do we really remember that when we feel sometimes like there's so many moving parts, right? And so what's good when you're having a good day, maybe take a picture of something in that day. Do a small video. We all have smartphones now. Record a voice memo telling yourself how great you did that day, or create a victory log of your wins if you are more of the recorder type person. Document your memories as you go through the journey, because all caregiving journeys, they have a trajectory and they have an end. And so when that time comes, then this slide right here will be a meaningful recollection of all of the things that were precious about the journey. And also have compassionate conversations and contemplations with yourself. Give yourself space to say, hey, I didn't do this as well as I thought I was going to, but I am still okay. I'm not a bad person because something bad or unexpected happened. And develop a sacred contract with yourself, right? These are the things that are deal breakers. I am not going to shift this for anything because this is really something that I need, right? And your certainty anchors are really important in this space. Very much like sacred contracts. These are the things that you put your anchor into and you're like, okay, I'm feeling unstable today, but I know I can trust this. because this has worked for me in the past. This is something that I do. These people are my ride or die people, and I know that I can anchor myself in that experience and then ultimately breathe. Breathe. So you say, well, hey, I'm a professional breather. Yes, you are. But sometimes we can log into a different kind of breathing in ourselves that takes us back to that green space where we started thinking of what births in our minds when we think about green. There are a lot of great YouTube videos that help with breathing. Okay, so I just really want to talk about self-giving and the replenishments very quickly. So a big part of self-care is self-giving, but they're also the replenishments. So let's talk about self-giving. What in the world is it? Right? It's engaging in activities, thoughts, and behaviors that remind us and reinforce our personal value. Because it's not that you don't care about yourself, but sometimes when your focus is just on caring for another, it becomes really, really hard to remember, hey, wait, I have value in here too. I need to take out some time for me too. And then the replenishments. So at the core of every replenishment is self-giving. But then these are the areas that range from the basic things that we need for sustenance to the things that bring joy to us. Right? So they're physical replenishments, social replenishments. And here we see what they are. Physical, showering, sleeping, exercise, meal, touch, breathing. And the social ones, talking on the phone, visiting family, entertainment and connecting. And then, of course, the spiritual replenishments, right? Making sure that you tap into if there's a place of worship that you go to or listening to music that lifts your mind and your heart. And, of course, intellectual pursuits such as reading and writing and learning something new. All of these things are things that we have to remember that they need replenishing because they do go down. And sometimes we're feeling many things, but we're not aware that it's just our replenishments that have become depleted and that we have to feed back into that space so that we can fill ourselves again in those areas. All right. So Pamela, Shayla, any thoughts as we move on?
Sure. I think for me, it's just important that folks know that you're beyond a caregiver. And
Yes.
thinking of self shouldn't be something seen as being selfish,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually a mechanism to staying well,
Yes.
and being able to tackle, the days and and the ones to come and what it's going to bring. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's important to not feel a sense of guilt that
Yes.
you have to step away and do the replenishments,
Mm-hmm.
that, step away and, go to the movies and enjoy time with your friends, go to dinner, take that call that, you would take that vacation that you've been wanting to take for a long time because you feel that if you walk away, am I abandoning that individual, like I said, that you
Mm-hmm.
have the privilege of caring for now.
Yes.
So again, it's not about, so the word of self-giving is so important because again, you have to take that moment to think about self first and not
That's
feel
right.
guilty about doing that. You have to be
Yes.
okay in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be okay.
Yes. Yes. And Pamela, you've been doing this for a really long time, and you have 4 people that you're providing care for: yourself, right? And your own self-care, and then 3 other people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into that space and if any of this sort of resonates on your journey?
Sure. So all of it resonates
Yeah.
resonates with me. And I think that's why I felt it's, so important, although I was nervous, to come into this space and be able to share my story because, my story of caregiving, it's not unique. It's not uncommon because, you mentioned it. There's almost 50 million people doing this every single
That's
day.
right.
I mean, statistics says what one of every one out of every 5 Americans are caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like, well, this is not really caregiving. I'm just taking care of my parents. Like,
Right.
that's what I'm supposed to do. They
Yes.
did this for me.
Yes.
How can I not do this for them?
Mm-hmm.
So my journey actually started in March of 2020. I got a call, and I was actually out. having a good time actually. And I got a call that my sister was hospitalized.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm the one in the family who's very thoughtful in terms of and deliberate in my thoughts. So I said,
Mhm.
okay, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna fly back over because I live on St. Thomas now. I'm like, I'm gonna fly over
Yes.
in the morning, and we're gonna get everything. Everything is gonna be fine. So I'm comforting my parents now, which was, I mean, obviously the roles automatically reversed, and I'm comforting them and telling them it's going to be okay. We're going to go through this process.
Mhm.
I have some sort of expertise in working at the hospital, so I kind of know how to navigate that system. So we're going to be okay.
Yes.
Um, then I got to St. Croix. Everything changed.
Mhm.
My sister had to be airlifted, and a matter of fact, she's still there, almost 24 months later.
Mhm.
And I have this, of course, has taken a toll on my parents who
Mhm.
are over 70 years old. So they too have their own health conditions. And now we have to not only am I having to fly back and forth to St. Croix, I'm also having now to fly with them to Florida where my sister is at. So it's been hard. Um, I mean, I'm very thankful for AARP and the fact that one of the priorities is caregiving. So I said,
Mhm.
this job was really not a job. It was really a calling because
Mhm.
they understand, because I empathize with so many people now that I can say, I know what you're going through.
Yes.
And again, going back to why we're doing this tonight is I wasn't prepared.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in all honesty, I don't think you're ever prepared for it because,
Right.
as much as I said, just like we had our tech run, for this event, we did so many things and to prepare. And then, hey, we come the night and things happen. That's how the caregiving journey has been.
Yes.
Every single day, something different happens. Either I'm getting a call about my parents and their their illnesses or their health, or I'm
Mhm.
getting a call from the doctors who are saying, okay, your sister is in this condition. Now
Mhm.
I'm being the one who has to now sit with my parents and explain to them, it's going to be okay. This is what we're going to
Yes.
do. I now have become the parent.
Yes. I
So
was just going to ask you, what is
mhm,
your who story?
I'm the parent now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm the parent. I'm the big sister. Sometimes I think I'm the only sibling.
Yeah.
But it is, it's what I'm called to do,
Mhm.
and I don't see it as work at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
Again, I see it. I am so grateful for the
Yeah.
opportunity that my parents are still here, that I can actually do this for them.
Mhm.
Because I know of so many people that if they can get that call from their parent, their mom, their dad, to care for them, you know they would drop everything and do that, but unfortunately their loved one isn't here. So
Mhm.
for me to have them in my space, as much as it seems like it's a whirlwind of a time,
Yes.
a lot
Yes.
more than that, um it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I have to say things to myself like, I am going to be okay because I
Yes.
have to be okay for them.
Mhm.
I have to be okay for them. And that's and so when you talk about the whole thing about self-care and whatnot, what gets me through it is saying I have to be well in order for me to take care of my parents. That's
Yeah.
my mantra. That's what keeps
Yes.
me going, wakes me up every day, and said,
Yes.
let me see what phone call am I gonna have to deal with today, and who am I gonna have to deal with, and it's okay. So
Right.
yeah,
And
the
if
reversal of roles, I think it's the hardest part.
Yes.
Because my father is dealing with dementia too. So that's
Mhm.
interesting in itself.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if I may quickly just interject, because a lot of what you're saying, we are Caribbean people, our
Mhm.
culture, our traditions, we care for one another. Our
Right.
communities are small. We have the village that is there for everyone. So I think one of the things that it's so important, and it has been mentioned, is that
Mhm.
yes, you want to care for that loved one, and you don't want to feel guilty. It is a new role, a new responsibility, but first and foremost, Pamela, you have to make sure that you can be that person, the new parent for your parents. And I think it's just important, like you said, it's okay to want to take a moment just for self, so you can sort of like refuel and
Right.
be the best
correct.
person that you can for the caregiving. So that I
Mhm.
just wanted to add that. And kudos to you, kudos to everyone who is a caregiver. That was part of the reason we wanted to host this event tonight in honor and celebration of caregivers. And just want to encourage everyone that if you know someone who is a caregiver, please, I'm going to make sure I get the correct email address, but you can submit that name. And we want to highlight and recognize those individuals who serve day to day as caregivers. So, ladies, thank you again so much. I know the conversation is going to continue, but we are so grateful for you leading tonight's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say one last thing before we end. This is really important, and it is the self-care role of forgiveness. Because I think that there's always something that a caregiver feels like they're holding on to. Like I think someone just mentioned, I think it was you, Shayla, that talked about guilt. And so it's really to truly acknowledge that we're just flawed. We're humans, we're flawed, and sometimes we make choices that really can cause harm to ourselves, the way we think about ourselves, or maybe another. But instead of continuing to feel the shame, we can choose to treat ourselves compassionately and understand and learn from the experience and accept responsibility for actions and grow in ways that are effective for change. That is a definition for self-forgiveness, right? We're not getting onto this journey as caregivers perfectly, but ultimately the reason that we need to engage in self-forgiveness is because it enables us to do something extremely important on this journey. And that is to separate who we are from a mistake we've made. Because let's just be clear here, we're going to make mistakes along this way. And you have to forgive yourself as the groundwork for being able to forgive others who are also flawed on this journey with you. Pamela, where would you say forgiveness falls into this amazingly large and lovely journey that you're on in caregiving?
Wow, that's a good one. That's a good question. I think every single day that when you think that could I have done, because I stop and I think of things like that. Could I have done it differently? And don't ponder on if you've made a mistake, because it's okay. It's a new role for you. It's a new opportunity. And see it as that. It's a new opportunity for you to learn and to grow.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get it right the next time.
Yeah.
You just it's like all of this is just ammunition, tools in your toolkit, that when you get to that next point, you have the backup that you're going to
Right.
need in order to tackle it. So self-forgiveness, like I said, it's different parts of the journey.
Yes.
But again, it starts with saying that it's okay if you've made a
Yes.
mistake. This is uncharted territory, so
That's
you're not going
right.
to get it right every single time.
No.
So it starts, you have to just accept what it is.
That's right. That's right.
You just have
And
to
that is
accept
so
it.
true. That is so true. It is really an important part of the journey, because if we don't engage in self-forgiveness as caregivers, what happens is that we start leaning into this whole pool of perfection. And we've talked earlier about the fact that this whole mindset of perfection is a setup, and it's a setup for a setback. And so really, self-forgiveness is really one of the anchors that we have to hold on to as we move through this caregiving journey, because we want to really have a clear demarcation between who we are and the work that we're actually doing. And it's really important to understand that, hey, this work that is happening in this caregiving world with the 50 million people that are on this journey, that it's really about shared humanity, isn't it? The care recipients shared humanities, the caregivers shared humanity, and both need to be accepted, loved, seen, and valued. And sometimes in the space of caregiving, when we just want that person to be okay, it makes it sort of difficult to embrace the fact that It is a shared humanity experience. And so,
Absolutely.
right. And so, you know, I'd like you, Pamela, and I don't know if you're both going to be able to do it at the same time, but here's just one more thing I really want you to put in your toolbox as you go through some of the challenges along the way. So, Pamela, I'm going to read the sentence that's going to pop up on the screen, and then what
Okay.
I'd like you to do is say these words that you're reading right now, just like me. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. The one I see needs to feel safe.
Just like me.
The one I see needs to be loved.
Absolutely just like me.
The one I see needs to be understood.
Definitely just like me.
The one I see needs to be heard.
Just like me.
The one I see needs forgiveness.
Just like me. Mhm.
The one I see needs healing.
Just like me.
The one I see needs to belong.
Just like me.
So when we get into the just like me space, it really does show our shared humanity, doesn't it? Because just like me, that person that you're caring for needs all those things. So are we that different? Is there such a big difference between the caregivee and the caregiver and the care recipient,
Recipients.
right? For what it is that they need. They need things just like us. And why is it important to do the just like me exercise? Why is it important to keep it in your arsenal? Because there are going to be days when it's going to be tough. And saying, hey, that person is just like me, it levels the playing field. They may be having a tough day. You've had tough days too. They may be in a place where it's really hard, but what you're doing reestablishes the fact that we're all having a human experience here. When you are with that person and in that just like me space, it celebrates the fact that we all have frailties as human beings. And then ultimately, it leaves a space for us to have the mistakes that will ultimately come up as we move towards being in this human space with a human person that needs us to care for them in a way that ultimately, just like you, would want to be cared for. So I really just love this last quote that I'm going to share with you. Pamela, you tell me what this quote births in you. Caregiving often calls us to lean into love we didn't know was possible. Does that resonate with you on your journey?
Absolutely. And I
Why don't
mean,
you
we've
share
been,
how?
yeah, we've been using the word all throughout the night about our journey and
Yes.
navigating the system of caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a caregiver, and for those, like I said, who are going to be in this space,
Mm-hmm.
some sooner than others, um, it's a journey just like the journey of life. You never know what to expect. You never know what's going to be around the corner. If you take the left and when you should have taken the right turn,
Yeah.
um, it's okay because I think once you're rooted in love, that you're doing
Mm-hmm.
it from there. That's where it needs to start from, and that's where it's going to end.
Yeah.
That you know that this is not a work that you're doing, but it is a show of compassion and love for your loved one
Mm.
that has, you know, done this for you so selflessness,
Mm-hmm.
and so unconditional love that you know just in as much as it can be difficult,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the journey just like we're
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the journey of life, and I'm never knowing what the next day will bring. It may be a bad day, and then again, it may not. That might be that rewarding day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying tomorrow, it may be Sunday, it may be Monday, who knows? But just be ready. Just be
Yes.
ready, and whatever it is, just accept it. But once you're starting from a place of love, then
Yes.
everything else works from there.
Yes. Yes. I like that. As long as you start from a place of love, and if I could just add to that, imperfection. Brene Brown, one of the authors that I really love, wrote a book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And we're really, as caregivers, just looking to have connection and not perfection. But connection, like you say, it resides in that place of love. So starting the journey from love is truly the way to go.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Ladies, this has just been so
Mhm.
fantastic. And I know, Pamela, you're going to have some final thoughts. But again, we have to tremendously thank you, Dr. Bratwitt. We have to thank you, Pamela, and AARP for just being able to join us in this collaboration so that we can focus on our caregivers. And on behalf of the entire chapter, on behalf of our president, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. I think that everyone will be able to have so many great takeaways from the information that you shared today. But Pamela, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you have some final thoughts and comments, so the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. So I really want to say, just on behalf of our nearly 22,000 members residing here in the territory, I thank the ladies of AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, for really giving us this opportunity to share insight, expertise, and my experience into caregiving. And to our caregivers, I know that, you know, the month of November is set aside to recognize and celebrate the work, or the love rather, that we do and share every day with our loved one. But understand that, you know, 365 days of the year, you know, every single day, your work, it does not go unnoticed. We know what you do, we recognize what we do, and we thank you every single day, um, for not for your sacrifice, but your love and your willingness to share, and understand that, you don't have to go at it alone. Um, you know, the wonderful thing of AARP is, you know, you may not recognize them as a friend, because oftentimes we, you know, turn to our family, our churches, or others, you know, in the community for support. But AARP provides some valuable and insightful resources that's available, and I'll give our website, and I know it's going to pop up on the screen shortly, which is www.aarp.org/caregiving. And of course, here in the Virgin Islands, we have our localized page, and you can access that at www.aarp.org/vi. So no matter where you're at in your journey of family caregiving, just beginning to anticipate a need and helping to coordinate that move, understand that we are here to support you. We're here to help you navigate the care system, and we remain committed to doing so. So again, thank you, ladies of of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I appreciate, being invited and definitely collaborating on this conversation. And of course, to Dr. Brathwaite, a facilitator of our being ARP Caregivers Workshop, which we do, at least twice a year. We hold different sessions. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this and joining me on my journey, and as well as the journey of, you know, the 50 million others who are going through this every single day. So again, thank you again, and be safe and be well, and take care of self.
And before we completely leave the live, I will, of course, allow our president some closing remarks. And I'm going to let her close things out. But we just wanted to remind everyone who viewed tonight, and even if you know of a caregiver, we are asking you to submit their name to our chapter email address. You can inbox it to our chapter's Facebook and Instagram page. So I'll just quickly share that. So the email address is sigma theta omega dot aka at gmail.com. Sigma theta omega dot aka at gmail.com. And on Facebook, Sigma Theta Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. That's the page that you are currently viewing tonight's forum on. And also, you can email it to our Instagram inbox at aka STO1990. That's 1990. All right. So now, with all of the thank yous and all of the love going to Dr. Bratwitt and to you, Pamela, I will turn things over now for closing remarks to our president, Mrs. Julisse Holder.
Well, I couldn't have tonight end without giving my kudos. Ladies, wow. Dr. Bradwitt, Miss Toussaint, Pamela, you ladies blew it out of the park. And I've been jotting my notes down because boy, did I gain lots of takeaways. My first and foremost, I have to identify the self-care routine. I have to create this green space for myself. And most importantly, I need to stay clear of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Stay clear of them. I really want to thank everyone for participating, whether as a viewer or as a panelist. Panelists, thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and to help us equip our toolbox. And we look forward to hearing from you again. Good night.
So, ladies and gentlemen, everyone that tuned in, be sure to always keep it locked to the Sigma Theta Omega Facebook page, our Instagram page, so you can be informed on all of the upcoming projects, initiatives, and events that we have in store for our Virgin Islands community. So, once again, thank you so much for joining us on a Monday night for this great and valuable information. I hope that there was something that you can hold on to. We thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your night. That concludes tonight's program.